Welcome to sunshine, beautiful landscape and a new car for you here today on Autogefühl, your number one resource for in-depth car reviews and your number one community to discuss cars. With Thomas. The new Skoda Kamiq. This is the latest small or compact SUV and we're going to examine it in exterior, interior and the driving experience. So if you're interested, I can tell you this will be a very interesting car because it's about the price performance. Everything of that in Full HD, full screen and full length. Let's go! Famous route here also for motorcyclists where we're filming at the moment, therefore you might hear some background noise from time to time, but that's also the reason why we're using this big microphone, because it massively reduces background noise. So to the front of the new Skoda Kamiq here, the new SUV, it is actually on the MQB A0 platform, so the platform also the Seat Ibiza is using, the VW Polo and so on. But this one is the size of a Volkswagen Golf, for example, lengthwise. Soon more to that. In the front you can see it has this crossover SUV look, then with those very slim headlamps, but the real happening jewel is here, the main headlamp unit. The top part is the LED daytime running light, and also the normal headlamp unit comes with LED as standard. That's also quite rare in this segment. The only thing you can upgrade are the turning indicators, both front and rear, and in the rear the backlight when you put in the reverse gear. This is just optional LED, but other than that, everything already comes with LED. The trim level here for today is style with a dynamic black pack, so to say. And therefore, you also have those sportier accentuations in the lower part with the bumper right there, for example. See here, the Skoda logo is on this nose there in the middle part, so a very likable design. And most important, the color for today is called Race Blue, beautiful name. And we also call it Thomas Blue because this one here is one of my favorite strong blues. 4m24, 13'9" or 167 inches is the length of the Skoda Kamiq. As I said earlier, it's the length of a Volkswagen Golf. Pretty interesting that they can build this one then, but still on this very small platform. Then wheels come from 16 to 18 inch. Those ones are in the middle, 17 inch. So it's a quite good pick between design and still having some comfort. Then design lines, you've got, first of all, roof rails on the top part, contrasting color. Then there's a main design right here in light and shadow, dividing, and it's getting a little bit narrower towards the rear of the car. And in this line here, we also have a contrasting lower bumper. Chrome is on the lower part of the windows. The upper part just has the basic rubber use. And suspension-wise, that's very interesting. There's a base suspension. And, the whole car is about 4 centimeters higher than a Skoda Scala, which would be the same car as non-SUV, just as a comparison. And when you pick the sport suspension, which is a fixed one, it's 1 centimeter lower. We have that one here today. See out later how that one plays out. And the sport suspension also has a setting to get a stiffer damper rate, but then you have like 2 fixed settings you can pick from. So that's it for the side profile. Do you like it? In the rear you have a typical hatch design of a Volkswagen AG MQB car, but then they have those special tail lamps right there, and they also come LED standard, as I said earlier. And I'm glad, in the lower part, this is a very interesting design. Yes, there is a hole, but I wouldn't call that this one is still like a fake exhaust design. I'm glad they did not go for fake exhaust. So overall, the exterior is not that spectacular, but overall likable, rather conservative. The Skoda designs are not that revolutionary, but that's also not about it. I think, again, beautiful color we have here today. And we will also have a second car for you here today. First of all, here in black to have some color variation, soon more colors. Also the LED daytime running light here, very slim. They also form an even stronger contrast then to the even darker color, very interesting. And this car we will also use to show a driving comparison later on. We will have the blue car with the 1.0 TSI and the DSG automatic gearbox, dual clutch transmission, and the sport suspension. And this one here, same engine, but the normal suspension and the manual gearbox, so we can even show you a little bit more variation today later on. And another shot here from the rear, or this rear 3/4 perspective. Wow, what a beautiful background here. This is a shot, right? Way to go. Thank you, Holger, for the shooting today. So, and here in the black car, you can also see that the contrast here with the lower one is even, you know, more attractive, so to say, than in this special contrast. It always depends on the color. Hey, we got more colors for you. Let's go. So what's under the hood right here? Well, no hydraulic struts, but yeah, okay, I think for the car at that price, that's still okay. And today we have a 1-liter 3-cylinder turbo petrol engine, the 1.0 TSI. This one then either with 95 or with 115 horsepower, the latter one today. It starts with manual hand drive and an optional DSG for the stronger horsepower version, today also with the DSG. Then there will also be a 1.5 TSI 4-cylinder, 150 horsepower, also optional with DSG. And then 1.6 diesel TDI, 115 horsepower, also optional DSG. And a 1-liter G-Tech, so a CNG engine, 90 horsepower. That one then only with manual. So the true only manual engines will be the CNG one and the smallest petrol engine. All others then optional with this dual clutch transmission, the 7-speed version, and 6-speed when you have manual gearbox. And again, front-wheel drive only for this vehicle. So, yeah, I mean, it's an SUV. It's not thought out to be driving off-road. But, well, there's an underfloor cover, underbody cover available if you want to have it a little bit more off-road capable. Start the interior with the typical VW Group key, like this, but of course keyless entry is available. Like this, put your hand on the outside, right there. Also the mirror flips in, on the inside it flips out again, yeah, there we go. And door closing sound. Doesn't sound too good, but one of the reasons is also that here we also have those door protectors, which are then also creating a sound on their own. But of course, they are a very cool solution to protect any scratches to the doors for you and also for others, of course, both front and rear doors. And then, what is cool with this car is it receives exclusive materials. Quite often so far, the Skoda cars were, for example, less equipped than the VW pendant or something like that. But here, this is a soft touch material at the top of the door, and it has a nice structure, like a premium structure in it. So this is very good from the look and feel we see here. And also everything we can touch here, galvanized background right there. So very nicely done. Then this is like Golf style, and then also reasonable space for bottles on the inside of the doors. This optional sound system here, by the way, is, didn't attract too much of my attention, honestly. Tested the sound earlier. Then the rest of the interior, also pretty cool as for build quality, because you have the structure here, soft touch. This one here is soft touch. You get different decor elements. This one has a dynamic package, also has the perforated steering wheel and those sport seats. You get very nice basic fabric seats, where you can also flip the co-driver seat and complete it to the front. More about that later. And then this one here is the optional sports seat with some Alcantara at the inside there, and the rest is pure fabric then, integrated head restraint. And it's very interesting, it's great visually and also a nice animal-friendly solution. So good offerings they do have here for us today. What about the comfort? Because I did test this vehicle also in Geneva, both with the normal seat and with the sport seats, and I can say both are good, yes. But if you're taller, the sport seat is somewhat cool because it's just a little bit, wider in general. At the same time, it does offer you more shoulder support, especially in the upper area. So for tall people, on the long run, definitely sport seats are recommended. And wow, I mean, this is a nice upright seating position, so also more comfortable than the Skoda Scala, for example. And yeah, really cool. It feels like a more evolved, like a bigger car, especially when you have those sport seats and the sports package right there. I'm 1.86 or 6'1". If you haven't subscribed, do so please. Leaves a lot of headroom, so you have massive amounts of space, also shoulder-wise. So you feel like being in a segment above, and that's also one of the core things about this vehicle. Steering wheel control here, manual, up and down, and also front and back. So you can find a very nice and decent driving position. So yeah, very good rating here so far. And by the way, the seat here is with the electric control, also with the electric lumbar support. Now to the interior overview, and wow, the look and feel is just amazing. It's really like a premium, like an expensive premium vehicle. Of course, optional equipment, analog instruments are base. Those ones optional 10.25-inch virtual instruments. Then here on the right side, you start with a 6.5-inch small screen. The next one is 8-inch, a little bigger, and this one is the all the way full glory 9.2-inch screen, the Amundsen. This one then without any buttons, so you might, you also have like the gesture function, but yeah, it doesn't seem to work at the moment. Well, where is the sensor? I don't know, whatever. Usually when the hand is displayed here, it also has a gesture function. But the 8-inch could also be nice, because then you would still have a knob like for zooming in the navigation, or for the sound here, you have to go like here plus and minus. Well, but there are a lot of great things here with the car. For example, also this premium structure here on the top of the dashboard. Then there's still a manual AC unit. However, for the temperature right and left, if you go for the vent strength, I mean, why didn't they just put like, plus and minus here as it was used to be? No, you can just put it off, and then you have to hit menu and then go for vent strength here in the screen. Not sure if that's the best solution for that. Soon more details to that, and also to the other screen. Steering wheel, right side for the digital instrument control. Left side, you can also adjust the volume. Then, very lower part here, you have an inductive charging platform for your phone, then if it supports it, and 2 USB-C plugs. Then this automatic shift lever, again, there's an option. If you put it back and then even more back, then you can go to the sports shifting mode. So the gears are turned up a little bit higher. Then there's this area where you can pick the driving mode. If you have the sport suspension, it also does change the stiffness. Manual handbrake here, yeah, I mean, just for me, if I want to do some drifting action, Hoonigan style, then some cup holders, they're not adaptive, but then you can have these inserts for, clutter and stuff. And then there's this armrest, very well attached, and then also some space underneath. Before I start with the virtual cockpit here with digital instruments here, the check engine light. This is always the case with every Skoda, every Seat, every VW, every Audi, and so on, when the ignition is on. And it's don't have to worry about that. When you turn on the engine, when the engine is running, then it will disappear and it's okay. Yes, it's strange that they do that, but they just want to signalize basically that the light itself is working. Oh, there's a nice visualization now here from the Kamiq. That's nicely done. So good that we checked that one out. That's the average fuel consumption, which can be lower, of course, when using cruise control, and higher than when you use bending roads. So, but then those instruments, this is one view, but you can have different views, of course. Well, there's a racy view, for example. Then you can have this view, for example, this is the consumption and highest when you just have the mountain roads, but again, 6 liters in 1 kilometer are possible. And then you can also pick some other stuff, in here. For example, GPS, that one would be an important view. It does not flicker in real life, just on camera. And I tried a lot of things not to make it flicker, but the map still tends to flicker. So, for example, here you can have it, in a wider view, but you can even put it full screen. That is, of course, a very cool function here of the virtual instrument. So, more details to the software right there. So here we can change also the temperature, but usually you do that with knobs, but again here, the vent control right there on the right side. But then the normal main menu looks like this. Yeah, whatever with this gesture function. So, well, the sound here from the optional sound system, as I said, not the best one I've experienced so far. And of course, important always to have the GPS. Then is featured here in the biggest infotainment system. Very beautiful mountain winding roads, and it reacts quite fastly. Here, that way you hop back to your car, so the good visualization. Then you can also configure your own home screen. For example, oh, that's a nice song for dancing. Then Apple Carplay is available in a wireless way. Here we go. So that's new. And they will also feature Android Auto wirelessly, not yet, but at a later stage. But always both Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, you can always also connect with plug. But when you have the wireless Apple CarPlay together with the inductive charging platform, that of course makes sense then. And the rear view camera, here we go. So you have this view from above for the PDC, for the beepers, and then there's the camera, but you can also make it, a little bit bigger. Resolution is quite okay. Could be worse, could be better, but definitely interesting to see. The lines do not adapt to the steering, but overall definitely a helpful feature as always. So there was a question earlier then in our short review. Yes, it is indeed an option. There you see it. Getting in the rear, we also have those door protectors right there. Magic. Well, and then first look at the interior right there. So you have the same sporty layout, also with this quilted structure at the seats. If you take a look at them a little bit closer, right down here. Here, this quilting on the inside. You also have that even with the rear seats. That's pretty cool as for the design element. Then you also have the structured inner door, but this is then hardpack, but it looks good because it has this structure. And when I now get inside, as I have the seat in the front, said, well, the sport seat does cost you some legroom because they are thicker. So the normal seat will give you a little bit more legroom, but still, there's plenty of legroom left, and this is not a long car. So a very good package, and it's so roomy also here in the rear. Then again, headroom, pretty much still left. Option, you can also get a panoramic roof, which has a shade, but it just has the shade, and then it's a fixed glass roof. So advantage, it does not cost you any headroom. At the same time, you cannot open it. So, but this car here does not have the panoramic roof, and you have a very comfortable and nice upright seating position here in the rear, so I can even recommend this as a travel car for 4 adults. Very interesting. Well, what about this middle seat? Oh, Holger has set the co-driver seat pretty much far to the rear. Well, the middle part here in the sporty setup is a little bit stiff, so yeah, headroom-wise it still works, but this car is more set out that you sit on the outside parts each. So this is maybe a little bit better when you go for the base bench, the non-sports bench, when you want to use the middle seat. Other than that, there's ISOFIX at the outside of the seats each. You can flip the seats from here actually like this. And, yeah, don't want to squish the seat belt. And then in the middle part you have some cup holders, but they're not adaptive. And last but not least, in this lower middle console, you have even seat heating for the rear. This car offers a heating overall, so to say. You get the steering wheel heating, front windshield heating, front seat and rear seat heating. Will be powered, of course, when the car is on. And then 2 USB-C ports, also available for the lower end. Rarely for a car in this smaller platform, you get electric hatch. So, but this is an option, a very interesting one, definitely. And wow, you have a lot of space in the trunk. 400 liters up to 1,400. When you flip the seats, you see you have a lot of space right here. When I put a backpack right in here, and I can see the dimensions a little bit better. The lower part here is just a rubber floor mat. It's an option. You can get this. And yeah, then another from those features here. You got a retractable torch. You can use it as a normal torch then as well. But it also serves as the normal backlight. And the top part here is a net from underneath. It's also an interesting idea. 12-volt power supply is also available. And the normal measures here in length. Whoops. This one here is just over 70 centimeters in length. And about just slightly less than a meter in width. And we can also flip those seats, but you have to go around for that. Like this. And you can see there's no even cover to be able to use all the liter space, all the liter capacity of the trunk, and therefore you then also have this step right there. And if we go up to my seat as I would be driving, then it's about 1 meters 44. But the thing is, we have the sport seats here today. They cannot be folded all the way flat to the front, but there is also this version with the base seat where you can put it all the way flat. Not sure if it's the base seat or the additional seat. We have to check it in the price list. But you can have a seat which goes all the way flat, and then you can load things through about 2 meters 50 in length, even to the very front of the car. Oh, and by the way, under this optional rubber cover, right there, there's some equipment, and there's also a replacement tire if you want underneath, so there's space for that. And you can also get, if you want like an even loading surface here, there's also the edge for that. There is an additional loading cover available. Then you have an even loading sill right there, and then the step is also gone, just a little bit less height then, so whatever you prefer. And you can also get an electric towing hook. Here we go. And the final detail for today, yes, at the inside of the doors, there we go, an umbrella, Rolls-Royce style. And whoa! And in this case, it's rather against the sun, I would say. Otherwise, against rain. It's just on the driver's door, by the way, not on the co-driver's door, but I hope one will be enough. So if you're with two, then just hug.
If you're a gentleman?
If you're a gentleman, yes, Holger, yeah. But we are, aren't we? Welcome to Thomas's Driving Lounge with the Skoda Kamiq, and we start here with some winding roads because that's of course always very interesting, and we also have the so what sports version of this car here, not exactly with the engine but with the sports chassis and also with a sportier styling. Of course, this car is not predominantly set out to be sporty at all. But let's see. So 1 liter TSI, turbo petrol engine, only 3 cylinders. But here in the higher horsepower spec, 115 horsepower. And as long as I stay in normal mode, the suspension also stays normal, and also the shifting, so the engine itself stays relatively calm and silent. This sports chassis is already, said earlier, a centimeter lower than the normal one. And then of course it gets stiffer in this second suspension setting, so it's not an adaptive suspension here, just 2 settings you have. Steering is quite light, so easy to control the car, but you still have some input. There is this this lane assist, which will be more helpful on a motorway later. It always gets activated when the car is realizing lanes, and also is realizing that, for example, on the right side there's no lane but there's just green, but the car still does realize that, so that's well done. So the steering input is quite nice and also progressive, so you don't have to steer that much. You can see that in the corners now. So when I'm here, for example, is 90 degree left so far, so you see here I also have to turn the steering wheel exactly 90 degrees. That's nice, and I can keep both hands at the steering wheel all the time, especially because we have the DSG automatic gearbox here, dual clutch transmission, which is very smooth in the shifting transitions. And at the moment, keeping it rather slow, then everything is very cozy and relaxed. And you can, when you keep it rather slow, score some 6 liters on 100 kilometers, especially when later on motorway driving cruise control, that's about 39 mpg, 47 mpg UK. That's, somewhat good, yeah? And then you can always use the shifting pedals here to shift back, so go a gear lower, and then you can also tune up this 3-cylinder engine. It always has a very interesting sound. It sounds more voluminous than the 4-cylinder, strangely. So that's very interesting. And you can also shift up right here with the shifting pedals. An alternative would be to change the driving mode to sport, right here. Then the gears are turned up higher anyway by the automatic gearbox. So goes a gear lower, and that's of course very helpful now for those winding roads right here. So I think I'll stick with that one. In the sports mode, if you have the sport suspension, then also the suspension is a little bit stiffer, and I feel that when there are some bumps in the road, of course it's somewhat helpful here to drive with it in those winding roads, and as long as the roads are good. But again, you lose comfort in some potholes. You have to be aware of that. Is it a must-go option in this car? Definitely not. I think you can definitely save the money for that. Unless you are very, sporty driver and always like to enjoy sporty driving or something like that. But maybe that's not the proper car then for you anyway. So, yeah. But I mean, it's somewhat okay. In the VW Polo, for example, I found it less comfortable with this suspension. It's the same suspension setup, basically. Like the same technology, but maybe they put it a little bit softer overall here, something like that. Maybe that's the difference. Or maybe just because of the size of the car and wheelbase or something like that. That could be a difference then. But other than that, it's still decently comfortable. Yes, that's okay. But you just have to be, aware that it's a small change then when there's some potholes in the road. So I feel that I don't need this additional stiffness in this vehicle. I'm also just fine with the normal driving mode, definitely. Best thing is really that the steering is progressive, that you can ease through those corners. And so yes, although it's not a car where you look at it from the outside and say, oh, that's a super emotional car and so on, it is still a lot of fun to drive it. Especially on the route Ecret. This is a very famous route here in, this border region, France, Germany, Switzerland. So pretty cool, pretty amazing. We've been here a couple of times with Autogefühl, also with different cars. At the moment still through the forests, and then the upper regions are even more impressive landscape-wise. So, and back to the normal mode. So I have then some more comfort, definitely from suspension. I do prefer that even here in those winding corners, actually. So, because even in the non-sport setting, the car is not leaning much towards the, towards the outside of the corners. So it's pretty much fine. You feel that this small platform here is delivering a good job, also as for the torsional stiffness, which was improved also for the cars that were already there in the previous generation, thinking of a Seat Ibiza or a VW Polo. And considering the size, you might wonder that this one here is still on the same platform because it's rather a Golf size. But yes, it is actually. And the only thing, when you drive slowly and then you have some transverse movement, I feel that you hear some strange sounds from the car. But only when you drive slowly. When we hear already at speed, this effect doesn't really appear that much. So that might also be due to an early stage, a building stage of this car, because we always drive one of the earliest vehicles, but still something I would like to mention definitely to you. That is one of the very rare things I realized which was negative about this vehicle. Again, when you're only at slower speed, like at easing on a wooden parking lot or something, like a parking lot here in the woods or something, then with some stones on the ground, then you definitely realize that. Other than that, it's great handling from this car. Again, it feels fun and sporty. Now I want to send this cyclist here off to the woods. Yeah, as soon as you hit the throttle, you also get some decent power here from this 3-cylinder. So it's definitely enough power for that one. We will see also in our long driving part later on in the motorway that how it reacts then when you're already at speed. But here for the lower speed regions, it's actually no problem. So you have decent power for that. There will also be the 1.5 liter TSI available, which of course will be more powerful. There have been issues with this engine, yes, but I recently heard that there's now a software update which is fixing this problem of the stuttering DSG. So good developments also as for that, and the new Kamiq here should also receive that upgrade then as soon as the engine is available. So do you need that? Yeah, for if you drive on the motorway quite often, you want to take and do some overtaking maneuvers, that might be helpful for that. Other than that, this one here will also still be suitable for the car. You have to think about keeping the price a little bit lower, because then the car is really attractive. And this one here is already very well spec, the car, not the maximum spec as for the engine, but definitely trim and equipment wise. Yeah, and those sport seats, talking about trim and equipment, those sport seats are really nicely done here for those serpentine roads. They keep me tight. Shoulder support is really good, and also good for tall people. So yeah, a lot of things positive about this car, and only proves what we found on exterior, especially on the interior, that thinking about the price performance, that you can even have some driving fun with this car and still remains very comfortable. Indeed, also driving wise, it's one of the best offers price performance wise here in this compact segment at the moment. We also want to show you some motorway driving here with the Skoda Kamiq. And it's very interesting also here with this small three-cylinder 1 liter turbo, 115 horsepower, and again the TSG. So the car is relatively silent. We're at the moment at about 100 kilometers an hour, so about 60 miles an hour. And it's a compact vehicle based on a small, even smaller platform. And for that, it's really remaining relatively silent, so pretty cool. So I don't have to raise my voice that much. It's staying quite comfortable. That also shows that this is actually one of the rare compact or smaller cars which are also long-term suitable. And again, this little bit more upright seating position is also helping as for that. So indeed, I have to say, it's also a good motorway vehicle. This sport suspension, which is a little bit lower than in a normal setting here, especially when the road is as good as it is here at the moment, is of course nice for more stability on the motorway. So that's also feeling quite good. I also have set the adaptive cruise control, which is keeping the distance to the car in front of me. And there's also a lane assist. So let's see when I get off rather to the left. See here, it's an active counter steering. I did not do it myself. And that was also a quite smooth transition. So sometimes those systems are really annoying, but here so far managed to do it very well. Sometimes, when they do not have a capacitive steering wheel, which are introduced step by step now, but not here yet, then it might have problems when the road is absolutely straight. At the moment there's like a little curve in the road, so there won't be any problems with that yet. So when it's all straight, then sometimes the car thinks, oh, maybe let go of the steering wheel or something. But here so far no problems. And again, 130 kilometers an hour now, and it's still remaining very comfortable here. Now the tarmac surface here is also a little bit rougher, but for that, it's still quite nice. And there's a really good overview, good round view from this vehicle. You also optionally can get a blind spot monitor. That's also available here for this car. Let's test the driving mode. Oh, then the ACC gets somehow deactivated. No, sorry, it was the distance to the car in front of me. It was just coincident but here you can see the speed is being reduced. As soon as the car leaves the place, then the car is picking up the speed again. So, once more, now, the driving mode, when I go to Sport, since we have this sport suspension in here, then it also switches the stiffness. But as long as the road is rather good and flat, there it is, the blind spot monitor, car's overtaking now. It's a good position to put it in here. And here again, you can see when I move out of the wind shadow of the truck, then the car is picking up the speed on its own once more. Yeah, here not that very fast. It's a small engine, so you have to wait for it a little bit. And of course, the ACC is never really super much pushing. And I think that's a good decision, because sometimes you have vehicles where you put in the ACC and then it picks up the speed and and maybe if you want to accelerate hard, you want to do that on your own, won't you? Yeah, I think so, at least. So about the lane keeping assist, again, so far a smooth transition. Let's see, do some lane change here at the sports suspension at the moment activated, and wow, that feels quite sporty then here indeed. Nice, yeah, Holger's also impressed from spotting us here. Then back to normal again. Yeah, maybe you've also seen on camera, so there was a little bit more tilting from the car when it was in the normal mode than in the sports mode. So indeed the sports mode is fun as soon as the road is really like flat and good. We know it already from, for example, from the VW Polo. And again, it's not a DCC, it's not an adaptive suspension, you just have two fixed settings, either normal or a sporty one. So I think you can really also leave it with a normal suspension, this vehicle, and save the money. Yeah, because the sports mode, I mean, for those serpentine roads, that was really great to have it there, yes. For all other purposes, I think you can also just leave it. So, yeah, unless, you know, say, I really would like to drive sporty a lot of times or something, but you also lose some comfort when being in the sports mode. Again, here, back to the sports mode again. It's definitely more fun to do a lane change with that, and you have more stability. You can have a lot of fun with it as long as the roads are good. But you'll be more sensitive to some road bumps right there. So I think motorway riding here also a quite convincing presentation from the car. Also the sporty steering wheel, again, always makes me feel a little bit like driving the Octavia RS or something, or there's also in the same series in the Kodiaq RS. So they share also the steering wheel part right there. Pretty cool. Yeah, I think we could drive a longer time in here without any complaints. And it's also good to have those sport seats with a little bit more shoulder support. I can really recommend those, as I said earlier, for taller people, also in the long run. More support, but at the same time they're a little bit wider, and especially then for taller people. So overall, I think, well, the engine is pretty silent. Don't hear too much from it. We can show you another Autobahn acceleration before we close our driving review. I mean, we're in the sports mode here. It's also changed the gearing a little bit for the DSG, so it will be a little bit sportier. And so is this engine enough for motorway acceleration when you have already picked up speed? So let's do like from 100 now. Plop, that's 130. So yes, that of course takes a while. In the city, it's no problem. 0 to 100 figure or 0 to 60 miles an hour for this 115 horsepower version of the 1 liter TSI is 10 seconds with the DSG. Yeah, it's not too fast, of course, but I mean, it's also not a heavy car, so it's okay. Fast acceleration on the motorway, no, not happening, but for most city purposes and so on, it's okay. And there was this typical 3-cylinder sound, but it was actually that silent that you could hardly, hear anything from it anymore. But definitely also very interesting impressions here for the motorway. And now, since this one here is your channel for the in-depth car reviews, we show you just a different vehicle. It's of course also the Skoda Kamiq in this review, but this one here does have the standard suspension, so not the sport suspension we've just driven. And this one here also has the manual gearbox. It's the same engine, also with the 115 horsepower spec, the 1 liter TSI, 3-cylinder, but 6-speed manual. The base engine, by the way, so this base engine has the lower horsepower spec. That one has a 5-speed manual gearbox. All other manual gearboxes then 6-speed. Oh wait, the G-Tech? Not sure about the G-Tech, the CNG, if that's 5-speed or 6-speed. But at least this one here 6-speed, and the lower horsepower spec 5-speed. And well, what about this manual gearbox first? So, well, the ways to shift are actually not that long, so that goes quite quickly. It's not, well, you do feel some resistance in shifting, so you feel how the gears click in. have experiences with manual gearbox at Skoda before that. They were maybe a little bit smoother, but it's perfectly normal, no problem to that. You can also drive the engine as calm as with the DSGs, no problem. It's a little bit matter of preference. If you more like manual gearbox or the automatic gearbox, I especially appreciate it in traffic when you don't have to hit the clutch and so on, so it's just more comfortable. Then again, it's also cheaper to stick with the manual gearbox, so that could always be an argument for the manual gearbox, definitely. It's really the question, what's more important to you? I would actually pay the extra price for the DSG because I just want more comfort than with the DSG. It's just a little bit more relaxed while driving, and also safety aspects because you can concentrate on driving, can keep the hands at the steering, both and the steering wheel all the time. And if you think about those assistance systems, autonomous emergency brake, if that one sets in, it doesn't stall the engine then when it goes to a lower speed. And of course also when you think about the ACC can then really reduce the speed to 0. And with the manual gearbox, the ACC stops usually at about 30 kilometers or something. So that's the downside of that, definitely. Other than that, if you really like to drive with the manual gearbox, it's totally fine. You can, of course, go for that. You can also test the higher gears very soon, but so far, of course, in the city, you can keep it at the lower gears. Driving through Strasbourg at the moment. Very beautiful inner city also, so I can just recommend to take a trip right here. So now GPS says we have to go that one, or I'm not sure. I think it would have been that one, right? Yeah, but we have time today, so that's no problem. So let's see. Well, I could shift with the DSG before, manual up and down with shifting pedals. That was possible. Here, of course, I just go a gear lower, so the driving modes won't matter so much with the manual gearbox, so it doesn't change the shifting characteristic of the car then. And also in this car, it does not change anything from suspension. So you can basically just leave the driving mode selector. It does not play any role with this vehicle right here. We could show you another acceleration maybe. Then again, I can go a gear lower here myself before. So let me put it a little bit slower. Show you a little bit more when accelerating out to the motorway here. So from 50 kilometers, and let's go. That's 80. I had to cancel it right there. But you see, when you keep it in the lower speed regions, it's actually decently quick from the 3-cylinder engine. It's just again, as we tested earlier on the motorway, when you have already at higher speeds, then you feel that you have a small engine. But everything that is in the lower speed areas is actually totally fine. So that's definitely very interesting too. I think here also, when we're driving a little bit slower, I mentioned that earlier, this rattling when you were driving slow. But the interesting is, as soon as you pick up speed, all those noises are gone, and especially here at a little bit higher speeds, again, very good wind or noise insulation from this car here. Suspension-wise, when you stick here with normal suspension, or when you have the sport suspension, which is a little bit lower, and stay in the normal mode there, I wouldn't say there is a huge difference. This car here still has a very good compromise between sports feeling and the comfort, so both works very well. Which one should you go for? I think I would stick with the normal suspension and just save the money. The sport suspension was definitely fun to drive, but I would always leave it in the normal mode there. And then the question is, if you really need it, if you never use this optional sports mode, then I think you can also save the money. Again, this suspension here also has a very good compromise setup. I think it's tilting maybe a little bit more than the standard setup of the sport suspension, but again, the difference is not that huge, so I think then you can just stick it with this suspension here. Holger, what's your take on the suspension? first impression? This one here versus the one we...
As co-driver, you don't feel any great differences.
Yeah, okay. I mean, it's always important to have the co-driver feedback. So Holger also says that there wouldn't be like a big difference, and I think the only like really big difference was when we were putting the sports mode in the sport suspension. Then it was really rough and stiff and so on, and really not recommended for this car. So I mean, if you get maybe like a used car or like those new used cars, which are already pre-spec'd or something, and the sport suspension is in it, it's no problem. It's not rough in the normal setup mode. Just don't use the sports mode, or maybe just on very good roads or something. So both will work actually fine, but definitely don't need it. And again, when doing some slalom, the car feels comfortable and sporty at the same time. Yeah, maybe tilts a little bit more than here in this non-lower suspension. But again, both are good. Both are definitely fun to drive. Also off camera, with the other car, we drove really long way because we had there was a police blocking often because of an accident. We had to take a very long road around to our final destination. And we've been spending so much time in this car here now, and it's absolutely super comfortable, especially with those sport seats for taller people. Holger agrees as well. We had no lower back pain whatsoever, and sometimes when we had some test drives in rather small cars, after a while I was thinking yeah, okay, it's a nice car, but yeah, after a while you might want to leave that. And here it's not the case at all. So very long-term capable, and at the same time I had so much fun, especially in those winding corners and so on. So that was pretty amazing. So really great. Here I'm even in the sixth gear now, and again, engine is pretty silent. So you can go for the manual gearbox, but I think my tip would be actually the spec we had in the blue car to go with the 115 horsepower plus DSG. That was, I think, a pretty decent combination here for that very vehicle. But if you want to save some money and you're a fan of a manual gearbox, you can also stick with that one. And yes, I said earlier, you can also save the money, stick with the base suspension. You always have to, rate which options are really worth it. Blind spot monitor is definitely worth it, so always go for a blind spot monitor. That's really important. Can save lives. Here now again, it's showing us that someone is next to me. Yeah, it was overtaken on the right side. That's not allowed actually, but this guy was driving so slowly. I was also only slowly overtaking. Yeah, it's the problem when you're on camera. They're like driving school teachers all out there. It's like, Thomas, you have done this. This is not okay. Oh, this was wrong. Oh, you should have. Well, I have to live with that, So, but it's also fun then to read that. Yeah, so far also some more interesting driving impressions here then with a little bit different setup. But we're here to deliver you this variation, and hopefully then you can also get to a very intelligent purchase process. And now to our conclusion for the day with the Skoda Kamiq. Well, it's somewhat a likable design here, crossover SUV style. Nothing too spectacular. That's also not what Skoda is standing for. But of course, a nice race blue or Thomas blue here for you today. Important is the interior, high quality materials, a lot of infotainment if you want to pay that extra price, and of course the usage of space. So the package exterior length, which is compact Golf size, but the interior is, rather a segment above that, and all on this very small platform. This is very interesting. So definitely one of the best price performance cars here now on the market, considering you get an entry price of about 18,000 euros, for example, in Germany. And then when you, of course, spec it up, high trim and so to say, yeah, about 30,000, maybe with a rather expensive one. But still, if you compare other cars and also which offer the same interior space, this one here is still a very good offering. And also the driving feeling, it was a lot of fun definitely, and we had good experience also with dynamic and agile driving. Fuel economy also somewhat okay, 6 liters minimum on cruise control motorway, 8.5 when you use those bending corners here. we had here as well. And of course, it's quite natural that it goes up. A very convincing car, and also at higher speeds it was very silent, good noise insulation and so on. So I think again one of the very good price performance deals now on the market. What's your take? Let's discuss it in the comments.